Alright, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I've been going over the PowerPoint presentations for Murock's Android Programming 2nd Edition by Joel Murock for the AWD1112 or 1112 Java Programming class. And I am up to page 74, and as you can see the slides here because they dovetail with one another, talking about the Java code for the tip calculator app. Alright. So if we look on the screen here, you'll notice that we get several slides that go over the code. Alright, that gets us all the way to slide 32. So what I'm going to do is, rather than going over the slides, I'm going to actually go over what's in the book and put in the associated code. Alright, so I've got some mistakes and stuff in here, but we'll get all that stuff fixed. Alright, we've got, starting from the top, got our package statement, and one thing we need to also import is the java.text.number format. Okay, that's the first thing, not that that's a biggie. Alright, then we've got our activity, the bundle. Under the view, we've got key event. We will import android.view.view. We need the on-click listener, the input method, editor info. Alright, that's removed a lot of our errors, I believe, putting those import statements in. Alright. We also need button because we're going to be working with buttons. And here we've got the edit text, we've got the text view, but I should have also put in import android.widget.button. We've got the text view on editor action listener. We also will need to add android.content.shared preferences. And same thing, but the shared preferences editor. Okay. And I believe that is all of our import statements. As you notice in here, there are quite a few of them. Alright, and it's flagging a bunch of stuff here because it's unused, but we will be adding that code. Alright, then we've got our public class tip calculator, which is going to extend activity. We don't need this any longer. And it's going to implement on editor action listener and on click listener. We've got our variables in here, not all of them. We've got our edit text, our tip and total. We don't have our percentage in here. We also don't have in our buttons. And I'm using the same code that's in the book, starting on page 75. Those are our variables. We also need to define the shared preferences object. Remember, the shared preferences is what we're going to end up using. That's what we're going to end up using when we rotate our screen or do something where we have to be able to save options. And finally, we need to define instance variable for tip percent. Hopefully by now everybody is cool, for lack of better words, with the fact that when you're creating variables like this, you should always start variables with lowercase. I shouldn't have to say stuff like that anymore. That should just be something that, boom, it just makes sense to you. All right, so there's our variables. And these are our class. These are a class variable declarations. Again, they're class variable because they're defined outside of any method. All right. So we've got our on create here. Super on create. We got this. We're getting our references to our widgets. We've got those three. But now remember, now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 variables. And we're only getting references to 3 of them here. So we have to put in our other 3. And to try to make it simpler, even though I'm going to end up getting errors after doing this, I'm going to just copy. So bill amount text, this will become percent text view. Okay, that's a text view. All right, there's the first one. We need our percent up button and our percent down button that we did right here. Those will both be of type button, of course. So again, we are getting our references right here, as we need to do. Shouldn't be any big surprise right there. All right, getting references to the associated widgets. All right, now we have to set our listeners, but now we have the other 2 listeners to set too for our buttons. So this will now become percent up button dot set on click listener. This, and we'll also need our percent, oops, down button. Percent. There we go. Now that's all the code. Everything I've shown you thus far is all of the code that's on page 75 in the book. So remember the package statement. Let's just take it from the top here. And I'm following the description on page 74. The package statement stores the class for the tip calculator activity in the package, in this case named jpscott.rankin.edu.tipcalculator. Then it imports all the Android classes and interfaces that are necessary for the class. That's what's in here. Next, the tip calculator activity class inherits the activity class that Android provides. It also implements the listener interfaces for the editor action and click events. So you must implement, of course, the onEditor action and the onClick method. All right. The next 6 statements that you see right here define the instance variables. And I've got class variable declarations. And I guess that when you look at it, it is, we'll just call it variable declarations. I guess these are instance variables just because of the fact that even though they are defined outside of any method, you're only going to have one up-down button each time you run the program. You're only going to have one or up button or down button or %text view, etc. Next we come down and we've got the shared preferences object. Talked about this already. That's used to save and then later to restore values. And then we've got the other 2 instance variables that we will need for the bill amount string and the tip %. Next, again, the onCreate method calls the onCreate method of the superclass, which is just something that you have to follow because, I mean, that's protocol. Then it uses the setContentView method to display the user interface that's defined in the XML. Next, it gets the references to the 6 variables that we've defined earlier, and it does that by calling the find view by ID method for each widget, casting them to either an edit text, a text view, or a button, depending on the type of variable we're working with. Then it sets the 3 listeners, so that could be set listeners. First, it sets the current class as the listener for the editor action event. Then it also sets the current class as the listener for the click event for both of the buttons. Again, that's about the first 55 to 60 lines on the page. All right. Now I'm looking in here, and before we get to the bottom, we have to also we've got our shared preferences. Where was that? Right there was our shared preferences saved values, but we never actually initialize that. So here we have to initialize the shared preferences object, and we say saved values equals get shared preferences, and we have to pass into that saved values and mode private. Again, that's the code at the top of page 77. All right. Excuse me. Okay, next we have to do another override here, and we have to do the on pause, because that's going to basically, remember, when we have to pause the system, when we get a call or we go to another app and come back, etc. So we've got to do another at override here. Public void, because it's not returning anything. On pause. It has no parameters. And we have to save the instance variables. So again, think about what we start playing computer here and think about what we want to save from our interface. All right, and basically what we need is the amount of our bill and we need our tip percent that we've currently set. Those are really the things that we are talking about here. And we commit those changes and call the parent method. All right. The onPause method saves both of the activities instance variables, those being again the bill amount string and the tip percent. These instance variables need to be saved for the app to work correctly when the orientation changes or when the user navigates away from and back to the associated activity. Well, not only do you need on pause, but you also need on resume. Why? So when they get done and they want to return. So this will have to be on resume. All right, again, it does not require anything. So the first thing we do here is do a super dot on resume. And I won't lie to you, I'm a little perplexed here because typically when you call super, you call it first. Here we're calling it last, and they don't give any explanation as to why that's the case. If I think about it, I'll try to remember that so I can tell you why if I can find that out. So get the instance variables from their saved value. All string. See how easy it is to make mistakes here. And I make more than my share anyway. This should have been in double quotes. See the color codedness of the editor kicking in here. Next, we want to set the bill amount on the widget. that's a set text, because that's going to fill in the text, the edit text, or what we would typically call the text box value for us. And then we want to call, now this is going to give us an error because we haven't written this return yet. Call calculate and display method. So again, this will give us an error. All right, that's why it's red. But we'll immediately write that. So public void calculate and display. And you see that immediately goes away. Now, I do have this set up where, again, I can play with the wheel and make this bigger or smaller, but my machine tends to go nuts when I do that. So if my font size is constantly getting bigger and smaller, I apologize for that in advance, but that's just the way that it is. So we did the on pause to save both of the activities instance variables, those being the bill amount string and the tip percent. Then we call the on resume method to restore both of the activities instance variables. Then we set the bill amount string as the display text on the bill amount edit text widget, as Android sets the display text to its default values when you navigate away. So it's going to save what was there. Then it calls the calculate and display method. We're going to write that right now. It's about, I don't know, 10 or 15 lines of code or so. All right. And that's going to be most of everything that we need to do. There's going to be a little bit more code probably, but not too much more. This calculate and display method will calculate the tip and the total amounts for the bill and display the associated necessary information on the user interface. First, it'll get the bill amount from the edit text widget and convert it, this, which comes in as a string, to a float. Then it'll calculate the tip and the total amount and store each of them as floats. Then it'll format the float values and display them on the corresponding widgets. Now, I'm at 22 minutes. And there's a little bit of typing to do yet, so I think I'm going to end here, even though it may end up that the next lecture is a little bit shorter. I'd rather do that. All right, so I'll be back shortly with the next part of this.